Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm here with Allison Barlow, the director of the Johns Hopkins Center for American Indian Health. Thank you for speaking with me, Allison, and I'm thrilled to hear about your experience. So, I see that you've received a number of degrees, starting at Dartmouth, then going to the University of Melbourne, Johns Hopkins, as well as the University of Amsterdam. If you could just explain how you came to get into Indian Affairs as well as your position currently.
Sure. So when I graduated from Dartmouth, I was an English major and I had done pre-med, which is a major at Dartmouth. And I really was torn between whether I wanted to be in the humanitarian um, work or it more in med school. And I ended up going to Children's Hospital in Boston, science writer in the Department of Development and Public Affairs. And while I was there, I was right next to the Harvard School of Public Health. So go over there at lunchtime and listen to lectures. And I started to think, gosh, maybe it's public health that is the intersection of humanities and science. And so that was in the back of my brain. And then in the meantime, a fellow English major friend of mine from Dartmouth, right after Dartmouth, had applied for a Rotary International Scholarship to study abroad. And he had just been to England, and he said, you should definitely do this. You can get a master's degree. And he said, it's, an amazing scholarship. So I applied, and I ended up going to Australia, and I did my master's in English, but it ended up that I decided for my thesis I was going to read Aboriginal writing, which had only been published since the 1960s. And I started to really explore sort of how Aborigines were trying to function in Australia. And at the time, there was an incredible racism toward Aboriginal people. And so I got really interested in sort of pushing out beyond just looking at the literature, really understanding the sociology beneath the literature. And so I was able to combine this major with English and a field called ethnography, which is like the study of cultures. It's like anthropology, but rather than studying people and their habits, you study the force of culture on people and what they do. And when I defended my thesis in Australia, I had two different reviewers. One was a white Australian reviewer, and one was a white British reviewer. And I passed well with the white British reviewer, but the white Australian reviewer wanted to fail me. And he said, who are you to come to our country and to assume that you can understand anything about Aborigines? And he said, why don't you just go back and work with your own native peoples? And it really hit a chord with me. And then it was just complete serendipity. I came back through Los Angeles. I stayed with friends there for a couple nights who were my college roommate and her husband, and went to a rugby game. And a guy at this rugby game had just left New York City. He had also been an English major at Dartmouth. He had left New York City. He was doing research for a documentary on, it was called Healing in the Mind, produced by Bill Moyers. And the person that he worked for also went to the same college, and he said, you should connect with her and go take my job. It was the coolest job ever. And they're going to do a show on Indigenous peoples.
Oh, wow.
And so I ended up writing to this woman, and long story short, I went and interviewed with her, got this job, and they assigned me to research the show called East Meets West, but basically looking at how Western science and sort of sciences from other indigenous cultures were meeting. Who in the world was trying to consider balancing alternative approaches to Western science and Western medicine. And that's how I found who became my boss at Hopkins. Matu Santosham was at the time just getting started, starting the Center for American Indian Health. So I ended up going to Hopkins. I didn't work for him at first. I worked in development and public affairs again because those departments require so much writing and speaking. And over time he ended up hiring me in the center, and I've been there for 26 years. So
Wow.
it's been
That's great.
an interesting journey, but yeah.
So, what do you think has been your biggest obstacle in your studies thus far?
Wow. I think the biggest obstacle in the work that I do, because it's nonprofit, is we have to raise funds for all our projects.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we have about 135 staff, and about 65 of them are Native American people working in their communities, and they rely on a team of us in our center who are constantly writing grants to
Mm-hmm.
keep them employed, and it keeps you up at night. If I'll give you an example. We had this teen pregnancy prevention grant that we got from the Office of Adolescent Health, which is part of Department of Health and Human Services, and it is a 5-year grant. It's a big grant. It's 900,000 a year, and it employs 10 or 15 people. And we heard July 5th that because of the feelings within the new administration about abstinence education only rather than reproductive health and sex education,
Mm-hmm.
that they were cutting our grant.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so we're just scrambling to try and raise the funds to finish the project, because this project could show us that this particular program that we've designed would work. And once we can prove that, often we're able to scale it to other communities through other avenues. But it's been a huge jolt. So that's, I think, in my work, like not having sustainable funding and constantly, chasing funds to keep everybody employed, and
Mm-hmm.
you're affecting families if you let people go. So that's the hardest part.
Yeah. So, going off of just being in charge of kind of helping out with the lives of a bunch of families, how do you deal with? It has to be difficult to have to deal with that and have that on your shoulders. How do you personally deal with that stress?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, I mean, a couple of ways. I try to stay ahead of it. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I try to raise what we call discretionary money. So if we have money saved away that can be spent however our management team decides, and we can have sort of a buffer, or sort of a reservoir of funds that's available to help us,
Mm-hmm.
then it takes away the anxiety. And I'm working more with a team now to really do that and save up discretionary funds, so that we call it soft money and hard money. So
Mm-hmm.
this soft money is the money that you're constantly having to raise, and hard money is money that you can depend on and is always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, it's raising the endowment at our center, so we have a source of hard money in times when the soft monies are stressed. So
Okay.
that's how I do it from a work perspective. From a
Mm-hmm.
personal perspective, I run, I
Mm-hmm.
exercise every day, and that just relieves my stress.
Mm-hmm.
I play with my kids and my dog, and I love having dinners with our family. Like I really, that's the hardest part about traveling. Like I really miss that time, that dinner to all be together.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a new puppy, and that
Oh.
little creature is so cute. So he's
Oh.
he's a stress reliever.
I've been looking at the two programs, the two major programs, the Native Vision program, and I believe the other one is the Family Spirit program. How have
Yeah, yeah.
how have you been able to use those funds through those different programs?
So so Native Vision is a program where we combine sports with sort of life skills to get young Native kids thinking about their future, and in particular thinking about the importance of finishing their education and having an aspiration about a career.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do is the program has two parts. We have an annual summer camp where we have as many as 1,000 kids come together, and 50 to 60 professional and collegiate athletes come and coach them really intensively for 3 days. It's like nonstop. But in addition to just doing the sports clinics, they do a lot of breakout sessions with the kids where they talk about their own experiences, and that, yes, they look like to these kids, great athletes, but really they use their sport to get into college, or um, their professional career has been able to help them help others through other works that they do, and really understanding that sports is a vehicle for personal development. And in addition to the breakout sessions with the athletes, we also run workshops. So kids will go through workshops where they create a vision for their future. They create arts and crafts that kind of are a symbol for what they want to be when they grow up. And so a lot of the activities are focused on empowerment and a vision for one's future. And then we have after school programs in the communities where we host the camps. So we can't move around every couple years to a different reservation setting. But the goal is whatever setting we're in, we'll leave a year-round after school program that we basically fund at least two people from that community to run an after school program. And we have a curriculum that spans 24 weeks that the kids will go through, and it includes information about nutrition and fitness, but also about cultural identity and kind of striving for one's future. We're adding new components about helping kids and their families make family gardens so they have fresh fruits and vegetables. So that program it started over 20 years ago, and I think we've served now something like 40,000 kids and families. So it's been really cool.
That's amazing.
That one's great.
How do you go about reaching out to these different athletes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we formalized a partnership with the NFL Players Association in the very beginning, and so when we first started, we only had football players. So the first camp we had in 1996, we had 9 retired football players, and then. And we had 91 kids come, and only one was a girl, and so we're all like, we can't do that. We got to find a sport where girls will do it. And an old friend of mine that I had gone to college with was playing professional soccer. So I reached out to him, and he started the soccer component. And then we just kept networking, and everyone really wanted to start basketball, and one of the football players knew a professional basketball player, so he asked him to organize basketball, and it just kind of went like that. And now we have 6 sports, and it's just amazing. It's so much fun. It really is fun and exciting. We're trying to add some theater components, music and theater, because, while a lot of kids really can tap into sports as, a source of motivation, there are kids who would rather do other things than sports. So now we're trying to build up some of the arts that we can use in the same way.
That's fantastic. So is there any particular story that has stuck with you throughout your years?
Well, just on the topic of Native Vision, and I can send you a clip of a video about this, but there was that. So we really try with the lacrosse component of camp to recruit Native American athletes, because the sport originated with Native Americans. And there's a guy named Zach, I'm forgetting his name. He played at UVA and has played on some professional teams. And he was coaching the younger boys at camp. And there was this little boy named Colin who he got really close to, and he was asking Colin about why he liked to play lacrosse. And Colin tells his story about how his brother had died that year, and that he felt like the only thing that kept his mind off of his sadness was playing lacrosse. And when he told Zach the story, both of them got very choked up, and Zach gave him this big hug, and he's like, "You're gonna be all right, man. You're gonna be all right." And now this boy has come back to camp every year, and he's the cutest kid, and it's just that one personal connection. It just feels like some of these kids, it's all they need to kind of make it, that someone outside of this pretty tough, challenging world they live in cares about them. And, there's a lot of stories like that in our work.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's really, really touching. So, obviously, this is a huge program that involves a ton of different people. and a bunch of different connections on different levels. So has there been anybody in your whole process and journey that has really influenced you and mentored you?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I would say there have been three people who've been huge influences. Um, the first is Matthew Santosham, who was the original director of our center. He's just such an amazing person. He's a pediatrician. He grew up in India in really difficult times, and his parents ended up sending him to Scotland to get his education. And he had so much adversity. Um, anyway, he's the person who started our center, and he's been such a great mentor to me. He's a person who really believes in supporting your growth, and he always says, like, follow your heart, and really cares that you're doing work that you're passionate about. And he expects, I think the other thing about him is he really expects everybody to do everything, like to pick, like he doesn't like hierarchy, so he's a lot about humility, and any one of us could pick up trash, or or make photocopies. He's just about, like, everybody should be pitching in and showing that they're part of a greater team, and no one should feel above anyone else, that we all have different skills. So he's been a great mentor. The other person, in terms of the work with our Center for American Indian Health, there's a woman named Hetty Kellerwood, who is she's White Mountain Apache, and she was the first person I worked with when I went out to the reservations. And my first time out there, I went out for 3 weeks to help write this grant called Healthy Nations. And she was just so supportive and kind. And it was funny, I had, like 2 days left to get this thing submitted. And she came and it was a weekend. She came and got me, and she said, come on now, when she do something with us. And I said, oh, Hetty, I really don't have time. I have finished this. And she said, no, there always will be time. There always will be time. And she took me to this. I did a sweat lodge with 4 other women. And I was in the sweat lodge, and there are 4 rounds. You go around, and, the person who leads the sweat will say something, and then each person goes around and shares. And it was really moving, because a lot of the women in there talking about challenges in their lives and worries about their children. And at the time, I was 26. I felt like I didn't have a worry in the world. And they were coming around to me, and I thought, oh my gosh, because all of them had really cried hard and told these stories. And I was thinking, they're going to get to me, and I'm going to have nothing to say. And it was so strange. They got to me, and I just burst out crying. And I don't know, I was just overcome with gratitude. And I just said, like, how much gratitude I had for my own family and parents, and, that I had been given so much. And I just, hope that I could give something back to this community. And it was just like, I'll never forget it. But I felt like she knew that, like, I needed to open my heart, I think, to, like, be able to do this work. And I don't know, she's just so insightful and amazing. So I'll stop there. And those two have had a huge influence on my life.
Somebody, if they were interested in your field, what would you recommend to them in order to get involved?
Yeah. Well, and the people that I look to hire, like the younger people, I'm looking for folks. I mean, just going back to the English major thing, I think it's really important to be a good writer and good communicator in our field, because we're reliant, like, we have to produce so much in writing, be it grants or publications or reports, and all these things kind of are the lifeblood to keep our work going. So someone who's a really good writer, someone who's a team player, and in that respect, I often look for athletes, because I think a lot of times people who participated in sports have a team approach, a team mentality, and we always joke about in our office, like, those people who have been on teams and played sports do tend to be the ones who are just ready to go pitching in. I think the other thing is to really be sure you're working in a place where you're very passionate about what you're working toward. And I totally respect, I mean, I have friends who are in, you know, financial work, and they are doing so much with their work to help others, be it in their personal lives or through their work. So I think no matter what you do, if you have a passion for others, you're going to touch lives. And I think it's so important in our world today because there's so much fear and misunderstanding of others. Like, if we can, no matter what workplace we're in, to really extend ourselves to others, extend kindness to others. So, I mean, that's my recommendation. Follow your heart, you know, keep it open to being kind to others, and keep building your skills, whether it's in writing or science or, you know, history. But I think we should be lifelong learners so that we can continue to contribute more.
Well, thank you, Allison, for taking time out of your day to interview with me. It's been extremely insightful, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Oh, such a pleasure. And you go. I can't wait to see what you do.